If you could instantly memorize any book of the Bible, what would you pick?
John.
Ooh, and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, maybe I should have gone for something longer, like Psalms or Isaiah, to get like more value.
Philippians.
Oh, nice. Okay, is that your favorite book?
It's got some beautiful verses
Yeah.
in it, yes, and it's not so long.
The Book of Romans, just because of how many beautiful verses there are, the amount of good teaching in there, the fact that it covers the gospel message in detail.
I want to ask you, if you could instantly memorize any book of the Bible, which one would you pick?
I'd probably do John, because I'm actually trying to memorise the high priestly prayer right now.
Yeah.
But I think John is what we direct people to as an introduction to the Bible, as I think it gives people an understanding of who Jesus is.
But I think the reason I said John, like instinctively, is because I feel like that's a really good book to show the character of Jesus, who he is eternally, what his teachings were when he was on earth. It really gives a good picture of him, and that's why I would want to memorize that.
As much as I love books like Romans, I'd probably have to go with John, because it's just such a deep detail of who Jesus is. Yeah.
Cool, that's a good question. Any book of the Bible. It would probably have to be Romans. There's just so much deep theological, just really, really great stuff. I've studied it a few times, and there's just so many great verses in Romans, and even just knowing a few key verses in Romans, you can explain the gospel so clearly.
Do you have any tips on memorizing scripture?
I think what works for me is just repeating it day in, day out. I like to read it 10 or 20 times and then try go without and go back and forth between to try figure out verses. Yeah.
What book would you pick?
I'd actually probably pick the book of Psalms, just because it's like one of the longest books, 150 chapters. If I could instantly memorize that, that would be really helpful. Memorization is great. I found a good tip with that. One is repetition. Do you remember your phone number? Yeah. You remember your street address? Yeah. Do you remember your birth date?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you think about them regularly. You've thought about them over many years, potentially. And so that's why you remember them. And so I find with repetition, don't just expect to read a verse today and then you're going to remember it in 5 years' time. You're going to have to keep revising it. Revise over the next number of days, maybe next number of weeks. And then it gets into your longer term memory, and then 6 months later you're like, oh yeah, I still remember that one. I still remember that verse because it's being put into your long term memory through that repetition.